Hey guys, welcome to a new video series that I am attempting to do weekly, and it's going to be something a little unconventional. I'm going to call it something that might, raise a couple concerns, but it has to do with this new thing that I've been doing I'm doing where I'm essentially tricking my students into being better percussionists. Now, what does that mean, right? And in most contexts, tricking people is not good. But in this case, my students end up drumming better. They end up feeling better about themselves. So I'll make an exception here. I won't trick people in other things, but I'll trick them to be better musicians. And what I mean by that is I, personally struggled a lot when I marched, be it high school, independent, whatever. I had my financial struggles. I had my things at home. I had my hands that wouldn't work a lot of the time. And no matter how much I practice, I would just get in my head and kind of not be able to make any kind of progress. And this would happen at rehearsal a lot, where I'd be so worried about other things, or, I had a terrible day at work or whatever, and I just couldn't concentrate on drumming. And it was very unfortunate because I let it hinder my progress a lot of the time. And now that I'm on the other side of the fence, I see it happening more and more with my students because, everybody has different circumstances. We are all living our own lives, and we're all trying our best. So sometimes when, you're trying your best, if you're a high school student, you have all these AP exams, or you have all these things, or, worst case scenario, you're getting bullied at school or something is happening, you go to rehearsal and you're just not in a mindset to play drums, or you're just not feeling the best, and you just can't concentrate on what you want to concentrate on. And a lot of the times, I personally lived in that space, especially at independent band. At high school, I think I was talented enough and I worked hard enough, and it was easy enough for me to kind of get by regardless of all my issues. But once I got into the independent performance, the independent groups, going to March WGI, DCI, DCA, I realized that it was a lot harder for me to stay concentrated on these things, because now that I was an adult, these things had a lot more of an effect on my life. Not being able to pay for band, not being able to practice as much as I want because I'm struggling with 3 jobs trying to pay for band, not getting any sleep because, again, going to school, having 3 jobs, having a girlfriend. Oh man, I was really overwhelmed a lot of the time, and I kind of lived in that space of letting that stuff hinder my progress. And as an educator now, I keep thinking, what can I do to kind of help people through that, even though they're going through that? Because obviously I want to concentrate on the things that I can do and not the things I can't do. A lot of times I can't help people out of their situations. A lot of times it's stuff that only they can handle, only they can overcome. I can relate to people as much as I want, and I can sympathize, but I can never really walk in my students' shoes, or whoever I'm teaching shoes, in terms of their circumstances and their struggles. So what I can do is I can try to do my best to educate them regardless of their circumstances, and then, hopefully them ending up feeling better about themselves by the end of rehearsal, instead of, possibly feeling worse because they maybe got worse, or they couldn't play a single clean roll all of rehearsal, or all these things. And that's where I really draw my inspiration from, where it's this person is here, they want to be here, they want to enjoy this, and even though their circumstances are probably less than ideal, I'm going to do my best to teach them and make them feel good about themselves, and make them play drums better, because that's what I am tasked with doing. So I was thinking about doing this all in one video, but I talk too much entirely, and I don't want to hear myself talk that long, and I'm sure you don't either. So I'm going to try to break this down in several videos, a series of sorts. So I'm going to start with, breaking things down. And I know I've already done videos about this for a long time, and, taught this in person. And I actually had to kind of reformat my whole ideology behind this recently, because I wrote a curriculum for Making Space in Music, a nonprofit I work with, for snare drum. And I was thinking, how can I really teach somebody the tools that they need to develop themselves virtually? I'm not there to walk them through this process. I'm not there to explain things to them the way I would traditionally be able to. I'm not there to really work on their hands the way I would want to. So what is the best way that I can set anybody who is watching this curriculum up for success? And one of them was, breaking things down, for real, understanding why you break things down and the whole purpose behind it. And we're going to go over a couple of the major points. So we're going to go over the major points concerning a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about. And the first is playing, rhythms, playing rhythms in time, check patterns, understanding where rhythms lie in relation to the metronome. The next one after that is, breaking down what each hand is physically playing. So whenever I'm going to go into several examples, but exactly what it is, what rhythms each hand is playing in a passage, what rhythms each hand is playing during a rudiment breakdown, whatever it may be. The one after that is how each hand is playing during the breakdown. So a lot of times when we put 2 and 2 together, even though we can play, one isolated paradiddle really well, when we try to play 4 isolated paradiddles together in succession, it won't be nearly as good. We'll abandon the approach and try to like throw doubles in there, and we'll start picking rudiment over rhythms. Like, it's always rhythm over rudiment, and understanding how your hands are playing during the breakdown and how to consistently solidify that will lead to success. And the last thing being, oh my god, this text is so small. Okay, the last thing being how all of that ties in with your feet. Now obviously that is strictly related to marching percussion, but either way, every tip before this can be used for percussion in general, and even honestly a lot of other instrumentation. You can take this and run with it and break things down and understand why you're breaking things down. All right, so the first example I'm going to use is this bar that I was actually teaching here at Epic with a student that was working on a solo, and it was something nice and simple. We were playing 16th notes and 8th notes at 100 beats per minute, and they were having trouble with the double part of that. They couldn't really, they didn't have the dexterity, they didn't have the rhythmic accuracy, the sound even. They were kind of just abandoning the approach and trying to throw the diddles in. And this is very, very common with, most things that are just played in succession. And that is, the whole purpose of breaking things down. So going through the first step, right, we got rhythms. What is the big major check pattern here? And in this case, it's just 8th notes, right? Because everything is divisible by 8th notes, and it's the macro motion that is being played. So now that we got that, I would play what each hand is playing during the check pattern even, and then we move up, right? So each hand during the check pattern is playing. And what I'm doing there is I'm removing the hand by playing it on my leg, but you could entirely remove it. I like to leave it in first so they can understand what it is it sounds like while it's kind of there, but it's not really there. And they can hear the space. After you take them out, right, you can just simply explain in this scenario, the macro motion here is both hands are kind of just playing quarter notes, and one is offset a little bit. I rushed that third one a little bit. But now we go to what each hand is playing, once we break it down even more. So we got, if you break that down, we got, right? And then on the left hand, we got. And so I would break it down with the leg method. And then break it down just without the leg. And then you got the left hand. And then I would proceed to add on individual partials or 8th notes to kind of build the skill set. And what this does is not only constantly breaking this down, does it kind of, familiarize yourself with rhythms and what it's supposed to sound like and what it's supposed to feel like in your hands, and, generally just practicing the dexterity in your hands. But it also just lets you think about things on different dimensional planes. Now you're thinking about it in the macro sense, and then you're thinking about it in the micro sense, and then you're thinking about it in the half macro, half micro sense. There's so many ways to play around with this. But what ended up happening was we made a little groove out of it where we would take all 3 steps in one. So we would go something like, and then we'd move on to the left one. And then we move on to the full one. And there's a way to break it down where you're still leaving that 8th note in between on the diddles, which I can also, push, but I really wanted to push that isolation of the double. So they were forced to play those 2 notes in time, and they weren't relying on that 8th note, kind of just throw it in between that space. They were forced to play it in time because there was nothing to rely on the 8th note. And you can much more clearly hear when you're out of time, because you don't have that sense of playing in time from playing that eighth note in time. Like in that scenario, I was playing that left hand in time and the macro motion in time, but my doubles weren't good because I was just too reliant on that. If you remove all the training wheels, then they're forced to cope with the fact that they have to play good rhythms and the dexterity in their hands. So in this case, they weren't dribbling the basketball fast enough per se. They weren't putting enough oomph to get that out. So all of this was just working on that. And it was also working on their rhythmic integrity, because they were forced to listen to the isolation of both hands. And in this scenario, you're not relying on each hand with the doubles where you're kind of throwing them in one after the other. You're forced to be good with each hand individually when you break it down this way. And once you put 2 and 2 together, it's going to sound really good. And a lot of times you can break things down and it'll sound really good individually, and then the student will just not be able to piece the things together. And this is where it gets kind of hard, because it's kind of one of those things you just have to unlock in your brain. Like, you have 2 plus 2. You just got to say the answer is 4. And sometimes, they'll say 5 or 6 because they kind of can't put the 2 concepts together. But the constant reinforcement of this and breaking things down like this will kind of force them to eventually muscle familiarize themselves with what it's like to do it individually and then putting them together. And then lastly, with the feet, this goes a little. And if you're playing it with the right hand, it's on every foot. And it's offset with the left one. Now that's just one example, but another mainstream example could be something like paradiddles, right? We got, and then I break it down on my leg. By itself. So it's not that hard, right? We go off to the left. But what's important is they understand hand to hand again, because I've met many students who could play paradiddles really fast and can't play. Again, this is why I think these things are very important. Once you're playing paradiddles with your feet, and understanding where that is. Another really good example of this is quarter note triplets, right? It's a 3/2 or whatever people like to call it. Playing that with your feet will also solidify, another really good example is, triplet rolls. People will be very good at playing triplet rolls, but won't be able to isolate them, and it will hinder their quality on the entire roll because they just aren't understanding of what's going on behind the scenes, but won't really understand what goes, on the breakdown with the check. In relation to the quarter note, I'm playing the quarter note on the rim with my left hand, and I'm playing the macro motion with my right. Because all a triplet roll is a breakdown of quarter note triplets. Oh, oops. And playing those nice and even rhythms where you're isolating yourself. Right? And you understand that those individual building blocks need to be perfect for this to come in full circle. Because if you're not playing perfect rhythms on each hand, then it's hard to, break through that ceiling that you're at as a musician where, you can play triplet rolls, but you can't really play isolated sextuplet partials. So a big one that I had trouble with was accent tap. Not accent tap, flam accents, right? I just couldn't play them together. And one day, my instructor was like, hey, it's really just this, right? And they asked me if I could play that. And I was like, yeah. And then we did it off the left. And it still wasn't that hard, right? So my problem was really just not understanding that both those things just went together to make this. And once I understood the building blocks behind it and how they went with my feet, then I was really much easier, then I was in a much better position to understand where I was coming from, how I was building up to that, and how to execute that. And going back to the original premise of the video, right, because I got kind of carried away with the educational side, is that like you want to make sure that you are doing, as an instructor, the most you can to set your students up for success, no matter what like headspace they're in. So breaking things down like this, really, if they're feeling really bad about the fact that they can't play, you know, flam accents, just assure them, you know, it's a process. Let's break it down. This is what it is. This is how we play with our feet. This is what each hand is playing. It's not that hard. Let's try it. Let's try each hand. We try each hand. All right, now let's try to put it together at 70, 80 beats per minute. And slowly building that up and turning their negative day and like day full of I can and negativity to, oh, this is kind of easier than I thought. I just kind of have to put work into it, and you know, try to really think about the fundamentals here. And you're killing like 8 birds with one stone, because like I said, they're playing better rhythms, they're playing with better sound, they're playing with better understanding, they're aligning it to their feet in a way they've probably never done before. You're killing so many birds with one stone. Not literally, hopefully, but it's something that I think is very underutilized. Like a lot of people just kind of try to get their drum lines to play clean without any clear understanding, and it's not good for anybody. You know, a lot of those students will go on to try to march other places, and they'll be severely outclassed by people that just took the time to break things down and took the time to learn fundamentals and, you know, kind of ingrain it in their own practice. And this isn't something that's just applicable to you as an educator. You can apply this to yourself. You know, when you're feeling really frustrated about anything, just be like, all right, let me take it a little slow. You know, let's turn the metronome down. Let's break this down. What's the macro check here? What's the micro check here? What am I playing each hand? What rhythms am I playing on each hand? How am I playing it in each hand? You know, am I abandoning the approach when I start playing triplet rolls together instead of turning my wrist and moving with a little bit of arm motion? And isolating all those things will really help you play with such better quality. I mean, the Cavaliers, I have a couple friends that march the Cavaliers, and I was told that like sometimes they'll learn check patterned versions of their entire book, where they'll just play their entire book in check patterns, which is, I mean, genius. That's why they're at the level they're at, and they play with the accuracy that they do. It's because, like, again, even these top tier world class drumlines do not give this stuff up. And I feel like it's something that is a little harder to teach sometimes, especially when, you know, people are struggling with their day, their mindset, their week, whatever it is, and can't get out of themselves. I think doing conscious breakdowns and, you know, strategically attacking these things, even when it's yourself, you know, you're trying to get yourself to play better before an audition or whatever, but you've had a terrible week at work, I don't know, something's going wrong in your family, or, you know, unfortunately, like with this whole pandemic, stuff has been pretty bad. And how to like kind of not just, I mean, consciously trick yourself into thinking like, yeah, this isn't as bad as I'm making it out to be. Like, this is pretty easy. I can do this. I'm capable. I'm just going to try a little harder and, you know, just put the work in. So I'm going to wrap that up. That's pretty much all I really had to say about that stuff, especially the flam accent one, man. I struggled for so many years to play stuff like that when it was like, all I got to play is this. So whenever you're struggling with something, you know, don't freak out. If your students are struggling with something, don't make things worse by kind of just repping things over and getting literally nothing done. Like, think about it. Think about it strategically. If your student's just having a hard time being at rehearsal mentally, or, you know, I mean, this is also applicable to if they're not having a bad time at rehearsal and they're just not getting any better and they're trying, but they just don't have the understanding, then, you know, bust this out. Bust this out. I'm a fan of busting this out all the time. Do it as much as you can. Like, don't relent. Don't relent because you think it's easy, because it's the easy stuff is what makes good drum lines good. Like the fundamentals. Again, I sound like a crazy old man, but like the fundamentals thing really, really is more important than you guys think. So that's it pretty much. I'm going to, in conclusion, wrap it up for real now. Let me know what you guys think. I enjoy doing this part in shorter videos, even though this video ended up being super long. I can't even imagine what the video would have been like if I tried to do all of them, but I'm going to try to condense this video as much as I can. You know, and I think a big part of being a good educator is understanding your students' circumstances and seeing, like, you know, when they're not in the best state of mind, and how you can best teach when they're not in that best state of mind, and how you can help them, you know, not just, you know, obviously drum better, but, you know, have a better day, you know, help them get through the day, help them get through their week through music education. I mean, there's really not much more you can do at that point. Like, you are really utilizing yourself as an educator in the best ways possible, and that's, you know, that's all your students probably want from you. So, and on that note, we're gonna end the video. You know, Go get vaccinated, guys. It's pretty easy now. It's free. There are many places in the world that are suffering really hard because of their lack of vaccinations. You know, let's get this over with so we can start helping other countries, hopefully. Knocking on wood. And I'm excited to see the feedback you guys get from applying these things, because it's truly heartwarming when you can overcome people's circumstances and, you know, their mindset when they come into a rehearsal, you know, feeling down, feeling bad about themselves, and just kind of tricking them into thinking like, you know, you're not as bad as you think you are. You're a lot better than you give yourself credit for, and all we got to do is work on it a little bit. So yeah, that's it.